Hello students, today will we discuss about main trends in 20th century literary criticism. Okay, first a variety in modern literary criticism. Modern literary criticism offers such a bewildering variety of theory and practice that it is almost difficult to find a path. There were various modes and techniques, currents and cross currents of criticism in vogue at present. Now, discoveries and researchers in the field of science, anthropology, sociology, psychoanalysis of semantics have brought about a revolution in critical outlook, technique, and methods. Next, a definition. Modern criticism has been defined by Stanley Eger Hyman as the organized use of non-literary techniques and bodies of knowledge to obtain insight into literature. These non-literary techniques, according to him, are things like psychoanalytic association or semantic translation. And the non-literary bodies of knowledge range from the ritual patterns of primitives to the nature of capitalized society. Next, influences. These new critical techniques and lines of investigation have been greatly influenced by a number of revolutionary systems of thought about man and society. The major influences in this field have been those of Darwin, Marx, Fraser, and Freud. Darwin regarded man as a creature of circumstances. Next, man trends. The answer to each of these questions denotes a separate trend in modern criticism. Let us see what these main trends are. In the first place, there is the psychoanalytic vogue in modern criticism. The discoveries of psychoanalysis have turned out to be of immense value to literary criticism. Psychoanalysis insists upon primeval human emotions and devotes itself to the very drama of individual life. A major theme in modern literature, a psychoanalyst regards human personality as a vital and dynamic phenomenon in which the self becomes a kind of battlefield where different instincts and impulses are always waging war against convention and regulations. Next is the psychological school of criticism. The psychological school aspires to render criticism more scientific via an increased application of psychological knowledge to its problems, and this school is itself divided into two groups, one of which would explain works of art from a complete knowledge of the psychology of the artist, while the other finds more attractive psychological investigation of the process of appreciation. It is argued that the Freudian approach of criticism makes possible a deeper and better understanding of meaning, a work of literature. नेक्स्ट है मार्क्सिस्ट क्रिटिसिज्म. Almost as significant as Freudian or psychoanalytic school of criticism is the social or sociological criticism which took its inspirations from Marxism. It regards literature as a social institution. It establishes relation of literature to a given social situation, to an economic, social, and political system. This sociological approach to literature, says Wallach and Warren, is particularly cultivated by those who profess a specific social philosophy. Marxist critics not only study these relations between literature and society, but also have their clearly defined conceptions of what these relations should be, both in our present society and in a future classes society. Next, onogenetic criticism. Critics like Sir Herbert Reed have tried to involve a new type of criticism which is known as onogenetic criticism. It seeks a synthesis between the psychological criticism and the sociological criticism. In his essay in defense of Shelley, he wrote, okay. Next are the new critics. By the late 30s, both psychoanalytic and sociological or Marxian criticism had lost much of their value. And many of the younger critics turned for guidance to a group that has since come to be known as the New Critics. These new critics had their heyday in the 40s. Most important of them are John Crowe Ransom, Alan Tate, Robert Penn Warren, and R.P. Blackmore. These new critics were gifted men, and their quick success was due to a large-scale reaction among intellectuals against psychological experimentalism, literary homia, and social radicalism. These critics derived much from Coleridge, Henry James, Ezra Pound, K. Richards, and T.S. Eliot. Next, evolutional school in criticism. Another trend in modern criticism is what might be called the corrections of opinions. The professional art critic's function is solely the assessment of values. However, it is also of the opinion that the science of literary criticism is evaluation by some standard of the worth of literature. One of the most detestable examples of this type of criticism is Ernest Lloyd's literary blasphemy, which aims at revising downward the traditional estimates of a number of authors from Shakespeare to Hyde. The major writer of evaluate criticism is Wyvern Winters. Okay. Next, impressionistic school of criticism. As opposed to the evolutional school of criticism is the impressionist school, which holds that the critic, first ridding his mind of all prejudices and arbitrary canons and rules, should make appreciative contact with the work of art before him. Then, eschewing judgment and putting aside all temptation to praise or blame, he is to describe the impression made by the work of art on his own mind in the untrammeled appreciation. Something akin to this was attempted experimentally by Clive Well in Enjoying Pictures, where he describes his method as that of expressing as nearly as possible my immediate experience without attempting to generalize to draw inferences. Next, exegetical criticism. There is another kind of criticism which is getting popularity these days. It is known as exegetical criticism. It includes textual emendations, the application of scholarship for the illustrations of symbolic significance, and the investigation of artistic technique. Symbolic significance. R.P. Blackmore has pointed out, and rightly too, that upon scholarship all other forms of criticism depend, so long as they are criticism. In much the same way that architecture depends upon engineering, the greatest merit of textual emendations is that it clears the recording of literary works of art from inaccuracies and restores them to their original state. Next, a master metaphors or series of metaphors. Another important feature of modern criticism worth remarking is that each stands to have master metaphor or series of metaphors in terms of which he sees the critical functions, and that this metaphor then shapes, informs, and sometimes limits his work. For R.P. Blackmore, the critic is a kind of magical surgeon who operates without ever cutting living tissues. For George Sansbury is a wineweaver. For Constance Burke, he is manure spreader, fertilizing the ground for a good crop. And last, literary criticism as an art form. The methods and techniques of modern criticism filter through these master metaphors and also filter through something even more intangible. The critic's personal apparatus of intelligence, knowledge, skill, sensibility, and almost every technique of modern criticism is used brilliantly by brilliant critics and poorly by stupid, ignorant, incompetent, or dull ones. Literary criticism at its best is a personal art. It is the inherent power of insight in a critic that counts most, and not a blind allegiance to a critical theory or method.